Well, you've talked about some of these jobs where it's really almost inconceivable that somebody, that large numbers of people, construction workers, carpenters, iron workers, and so forth, it's very hard to think of them working that long. But there are other jobs like a cashier standing on her feet all day long for 40 years, and that now we're saying, for another X number of years, people are actually not retiring at the full retirement age. They do tend to retire earlier already because of health concerns. If we raise the retirement age even farther, it doesn't mean that they'll be able to work any longer. It just means that their income will be reduced by the early retirement penalty that much more.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vander Heet, there's one issue that was brought up here I'd like to delve into a little bit more. We have all learned that collective bargaining is one of the most effective means for workers to negotiate with employers for better pay and benefits. Do you have any data that would tell us what percentage of unionized workers have access to employer-provided retirement plans, both defined contribution and defined benefit plans? And how does that compare to workers that don't have help from a union? Do you have any data on that?
I don't have that with me. I could certainly look as soon as I get back to the office and get back to you with that.
But you might have access to that kind of information?
There are collectively bargained codes in a very old Form 5500 series that I might be able to put back together in a way that's going to be useful for you.
Okay, let me repeat. I'd like to know what percentage of unionized workers have access to employer-provided retirement plans, both defined contribution and defined benefit. Right. Compare that to workers that don't have help, that aren't involved in collective bargaining.
Correct.
Again, Mr. Eisenbreg, again, we talk about saving. But as Ms. Miller says, at $12 an hour, it's pretty hard to save. Family, kids, housing, fuel, food, everything else. So what is it? We talk about saving more, and people should save more. What is the effect on our economy as a whole because of our low savings rate? We have a low savings rate in this country. What's the effect on the economy? And how would you help people in that 35, 40, 50, 60,000 to save more? So what's the effect on the economy of a low savings rate? And if we think that savings is a good thing, how do we promote more savings among that group of income earners?
A high rate of national savings is generally a good thing. It leads to greater investment. The money is saved and put to productive use by industry, and I think this is a curious time because we actually don't need a lot of savings this year and next. What we're lacking right now is actually consumption. But generally speaking, it's a good thing. The buildup of pension funds, led to tremendous investment in the economy. It isn't always, of course, it isn't always invested in the United States, but that's a whole other problem. But to help people save, I think somebody mentioned, Senator Sanders, I think, mentioned human nature earlier. It's hard to get people to save. It's hard to get people to think 40 years into the future and plan for their retirement. I think the best
It's especially, if I may, it's especially hard to ask people to save when they can barely pay their bills today. People are paying for their grocery bill. They've got to figure out how to fill up the gas tank to get to work. And they say, oh, by the way, you also have to save 40 years down the line.
Right.
It's a lot easier to talk about saving if you're making enough money to save.
Well, and the government recognizes how hard it is to get people to do that and provides incentives. Unfortunately, the incentives are going to the people who need incentives the least, people for whom it's easiest to save.
Sure.
So that somebody who makes $25,000 or $30,000 a year gets much less even if they are paying income taxes and are making a contribution, a $1,000 contribution to a retirement plan, the government is providing them less than a third what it provides the same $1,000 contribution, by somebody who's making $200,000 a year and paying at a 35% tax rate. This is crazy. I would turn these completely upside down. I'm actually in favor of a mandatory retirement system with subsidies from the federal government. And I've mentioned that in the guaranteed retirement account that Teresa Ghilarducci authored is, I think, an excellent way to solve this problem going forward. But short of that, others have suggested changing the tax deductibility of 401ks, turning it into a tax credit, making it a refundable tax credit, so that the government is helping the people who need help the most to save, and not just helping wealthy people move their savings from a savings account to a tax-favored savings account.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just detour a little bit here. And I want to get back to the Social Security retirement age, because one of the arguments that some people use is, well, the American people are living longer. What's the problem? Let me quote, this is very interesting. It hasn't gotten the kind of, I think, attention that it deserves. But let me quote from a Washington Post article from September 22nd, 2008, quote, "For the first time since the Spanish influenza of 1918, life expectancy is falling for a significant number of American women. In nearly 1,000 counties that together are home to about 12% of the nation's women, life expectancy is now shorter than it was in the early 1980s," end of quote, Washington Post. And Mr. Eisenberg, you remark that over the past quarter century, life expectancy at age 65 has increased by 1 year for lower-income men. All right, 25-year period. That's not much of a gain, compared to 5 years for upper-income men. In other words, being poor is kind of a death sentence, isn't it? In some respects.
It certainly isn't an aid to longevity.
So what we're talking about now, if you add all of these things together, is saying to people who are working class people, who are already working really hard, who are not seeing any significant increase in life expectancies. If they're women, they may actually be seeing a decrease. Guess what? You're going to have to work to 70 before you get your Social Security. What does that mean?
Well, it's actually true. This is one of the, I think, the most compelling to most people, compelling reasons to raise the retirement age, that everyone is living longer, therefore they will be in retirement longer, will get a bigger benefit. But this is not an across-the-board phenomenon, as you suggest. It isn't just in some counties. I think the evidence is, and there's a report that I can supply to you by a researcher who has found that lower income women, and especially in the lowest income decile, are living less long. Their longevity is actually decreasing. So they're not benefiting from the overall situation of Americans where most of us are living longer.
So the likelihood is
that
if we raise the retirement age, many of these women would never get a nickel from Social Security. They'd be dead.
Well, they can, if they make it to 62, they'll be able to retire, but their benefit will be reduced that much more. They will be punished.
But this is an important point that we don't talk about enough. We always lump everybody together. But what he is saying, and what the Washington Post indicates, for many lower-income women, their longevity, their life expectancy is actually declining. And for working-class and lower-income men, the gains are minimal. For upper-income people who have access to the best, really good health care, they're doing just fine. Interesting.
I think the other thing, and I just asked my staff to get it, is that we talk about life expectancy, but life expectancy starts at birth. Mm-hmm. Life expectancy in the United States has increased substantially since 1900. because we have immunizations, vaccinations, babies aren't dying at birth any longer, so the life expectancy has increased because of public health and what we've done with public health in America. But if you, in 1900, reached the age of 40, you live just about as long as if you reached the age of 40 today. A little bit longer, not very much, not like the life expectancy. So a lot of people say, well, when we enacted Social Security and we put the retirement age at 65, life expectancy was only like 68. But today it's, what, 70-something. So we should raise that up so it'd be comparable to what it was in the 30s. That's missing the point. The life expectancy may have been that, but if you were a working person if you'd made it to age 30 or something like that, you could expect to live just about as long as you live today. So it wasn't that people were retiring then dying. It's just that people didn't live as long because of the low life expectancy because of childhood deaths.
Well, part of the phenomenon that you've just mentioned is also that people are living longer in their working years. Their working life has been extended so that the ratio of work life to retirement life hasn't increased at the same rate as
life expectancy.
Longevity after 65.
That's right. So raising if you raise the retirement age, actually what you're doing is you're going backwards from where we started in the 1930s. You're actually going backwards in terms of how many retirement years you would be covered by Social Security. I submit that. Now I can prove it with data too, but I just don't have it in front of me. Ms. Miller, let me ask you a question. There's a lot of talk around here about we're going to do some tax bills here and that kind of thing. A lot of talk about raising the estate tax exemption for estates up to $5 million per person, $10 million per couple, and lowering the tax rate on that. How much would that benefit you?
Start over. As you've seen my face, it pretty much loses me very fast.
Yeah.
I'm still taking in that I'm going to die early because I'm low income. I'm sorry.
Well, I say that really.
Layman's terms, please.
Yeah. It's not going to help you, is it?
It doesn't.
In other words,
Like
you don't
it.
have $5 million in the bank or $10 million that you're going to be leaving your kids, right? For the record, that was a laugh.
Yeah, that was a laugh. My children make the same amount per hour as I do. And they're 23 and 24. My son and my daughter-in-law both make $12 an hour. Mm-hmm. They're not in the workforce for 40 years, 20 years even, you know.
So if
I get very confused when you guys talk about all these numbers and taxes. So admittedly, I feel dense at the moment because I'll never have that kind of money to leave my children. Because when the income went down, when the stock market crashed, when I lost my last job, I lost my life insurance policy too. So I don't know how I'm ever going to leave them anything. If nothing, I may be just a burden on my children.
You know, Tom, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Miller just raised a very interesting point that we haven't really discussed. You know, we've talked about, folks raising the retirement age again to 70. And I know I'm a little bit of a Johnny One-Note today, but that is the issue that's on my mind. I wonder, and any of the panelists can comment on that, it would seem to me that if you raise that retirement age and people were not getting Social Security, they might in fact be a burden, as Ms. Miller said, on their kids. I mean, we're already seeing that in today's society. Wouldn't we expect perhaps more of that if we raise that retirement age? Mr. Van der Hey?
Well, I can't give you an exact number on that, but basically that is something that we try to get at in the testimony. We tried to look at what would happen, in essence, if you eliminated Social Security benefits. We could very easily go back for you, and instead of doing the current status quo versus nothing, do these kinds of comparisons for you and show you exactly the percentage of the population that would be at risk and or not have any other financial resources, if that's how you want to define being a burden. we could very easily go back and simulate that for you.